All right. Yesterday on podcast, we broke the news about Emmanuel Clase being placed on administrative leave over a gambling investigation. And it's been about 24 hours since then. Craig, I'm trying to kind of understand what's going on. And I guess I'm a little confused. We were talking beforehand about there's a lot of micro betting going on in baseball. And apparently why Clase is under investigation is there was a lot of bets being placed on his pitches when there's a 0-0 count. So you can, bet on, hey, is this going to be a ball or a strike? And Clase kind of threw some pitches that are way out of the strike zone. And with all the bets going on, baseball's like, hey, something doesn't add up right here. And now he's the second pitcher from the Guardians. And I saw a tweet. The team said we were told this was it. But then there was a report out from a national media guy saying, look, it could be more than just that. So I don't know, Craig. I told you this beforehand. I don't want to be a prude here. But, if you want to gamble, I guess you go gamble. It's something I wouldn't do. But, sports kind of got bed with the gamblers, and they're trying to get bed with the gamblers and then kind of keep their distance. And that doesn't work. You have to totally get in bed and totally be all in, or you just don't do it. And honestly, I would have said don't do it, but I guess they made their bed, now they got to lie in it.
Yeah, it's funny how, there was such a big issue with, people playing fantasy baseball. Like, players can't play fantasy baseball. And here, gambling has always been this big no-no in Major League Baseball. Pete Rose was banned for life from baseball for gambling. Now, he gambled on his teams to win, but there was the Black Sox scandals from the early 1900s, throwing the World Series for money. So there's always kind of been some of this stuff out there, but now you get in bed with the gambling sites, and now they're big advertisers for you, and you're profiting as a league on these gambling sites. And then all of a sudden now it's like, how do you handle this with the Cleveland Guardians? You have an internal investigation going on where there's two players that are, being suspended right now that could be involved in something like this or have some, connection to it. And you hope that that's not true, but it just makes you wonder when you have all of these weird, I think I don't really mind gambling so much in sports as long as it's kind of maybe fixed a little bit in terms of what you can gamble on. Like, we always have prop bets and Super Bowls and things like that. But in Major League Baseball, especially, if you're able to bet on whether or not a guy coming into the game and his first pitch to a batter is going to be a ball or a strike, that guy is going to know that bet could exist out there, and at least someone will know him that will know that bet exists. And then what's to say that you're not going to tell him, hey, why don't you throw one in the dirt, and at the very least you're down 1-0 in the count and you can come back and strike him out or get an out or whatever and save the game. But it just makes you wonder, and there's been a lot of people, sharing, collection, sort of a collection of Emmanuel Clase's first pitches to start innings. And there are some that are just so far out of the strike zone that it just kind of makes you wonder. There was one tweet that had, and Emmanuel Clase has come in at the beginning of the ninth inning 40 times this season. Now, his waste pitch percentage, these are pitches that aren't even close to being in the strike zone. His first pitch of the ninth inning, 17.5% of his pitches are nowhere near the strike zone. Every other pitch, 5.2%. So it's pretty weird when you start to see some of these things falling into place, and you just wonder, like, is this possible? And I think anything's possible in this day and age in baseball. And at this point, you just hope that, for his sake, in Luis Ortiz's sake, that this is not true, because if it is, the punishment could be very severe for both of them. Like, as in, you'll no longer be allowed to play Major League Baseball anymore, possibly, if you're found to be involved in this.
Well, and Luis Ortiz was kind of a fair to Midland pitcher for the Guardians. He wasn't having a great year. Like Clase, was could have been the best closer in the past years. I know he was struggling a little bit this year, but I mean, that really, I mean, one, the Guardians lose him for a month. They were barely hanging on to the playoff race. But now, two, if the Guardians wanted to trade him, I mean, he's out for a month. Why would a team? I mean, a team
you can't now. Like, yeah, and they wanted to trade him, and he was going to be probably traded. And that's the thing that really snake bitten the Guardians now, is that you probably had the best reliever on the trade market, and you were going to get a pretty good haul for him because he was under contract for a few more years. And now you can't trade him, and now you may never have him ever again. Who knows? It's possible that you may never see him pitch for the Guardians ever again.
Well, I mean, I guess a team could still offer somebody for him, but again, why would you trade for a guy you can't use for a month? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And again, like you said, I mean, there's a chance he may get suspended from baseball, maybe for life. So, what's the trade market there? I mean, I guess you could try to get him on the cheap, but that doesn't make sense for either side. So, yeah, it's tough. And I know the whole nature of baseball is, there's been point shaving scandals in basketball.
Yeah.
If you were at a crucial moment, you could do something to throw the game. I get that. But the thing that's kind of silly, in my opinion, is, okay, yeah, we might think it's fun to say, hey, we can bet on if the first pitch is going to be a ball or strike. But again, we're asking athletes to be above board and proper about that when they know people are betting on the first pitch being a ball or strike. Again, I'm not justifying what the athletes do. You shouldn't cheat and everything. But we're creating this whole attitude where we're running sports by betting. You watch a game, there's so many references to betting on it, and then we get upset when the player tries to cut corners. It's a real awful double standard, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's just bad for the game, I think. And Major League Baseball did so much to distance themselves from gambling. Pete Rose is a prime example of that. And now, of course, a couple of years ago, you had Shohei Ohtani's handler, or his, I believe it was his interpreter, that was gambling on games, and he got caught. Now, obviously, they cleared Shohei Ohtani from that, but it just makes you wonder when you put gambling in these games, and you have every sport now has it. It just makes you wonder, what people are doing, and is there an ulterior motive to? And especially, it's maybe even sadder when you have a guy that's, Clase is getting paid fairly well, and he's a really good pitcher. And, I know you mentioned Ortiz, and we've mentioned Ortiz, being sort of a mid-level guy for the Guardians. And obviously, he's not making a ton of money. He's making a league minimum salary. So, I mean, I'm not excusing anybody, making league minimum salaries to do this kind of stuff, but you would expect maybe more of those types of people to do it, because the money could be better as a gambling, in gambling, than it would be as just making your normal salary. But at this point, anybody could be involved in it.
Yeah, it's just, it's unfortunate. And I don't know, I'm almost out of things to say about the whole thing. It frustrates me when you're trying to cheat the system. The gambling thing as a whole frustrates me. I don't know. I mean, we're journalists. We're really not breaking news here. We're kind of reacting to the news coming around us. I'm guessing here, Craig, and that's why I'm saying this. I'm underlining that I'm guessing here. I always wondered, they talk about, Vegas being the smartest people in the room. When they set point spreads, I mean, obviously they don't know everything, but they get good information.
Yeah.
How do you think they're getting this information? You know what I mean? I mean, they know people, they're talking to people and everything else. They've got better sources than sometimes the sports writers do. I kind of wonder who they pay to get that information from. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but I also think, too, if you're like, Bet365 or whatever, and you start taking like a lot more bets than you expected for X, Y, and Z pitcher to come in and pitch in the 8th inning, and then you start getting like a bunch of bets on whether or not they're going to throw a strike or a ball, it feels a little dirty when you can see a micro bet like that, as opposed to, hey, will pitcher X, Y, or Z walk 2 batters or strike out more than 2 batters or whatever it may be. Like, it's one thing to bet like that, like almost like a prop bet like you would see at the Super Bowl, but it's another thing to, I've always thought it was weird that the Super Bowl would have prop bets on like what color Gatorade they would have in the, that could easily be manipulated, I would think, before a game. And then, if someone in the know, then all you need to do is call them and say, hey, what kind of Gatorade are you guys using tonight? Right. And they'll tell you, they don't think of it probably like that. Maybe they do, but it's just, there's too many. It's different than betting on if you think the Guardians are going to cover the spread or over under of run totals or whatever. It's a little bit different, I think, there than it is whether or not someone's going to, chew pink bubble gum or something. Right. When something like that can be easily manipulated. I've always thought too, and I'm a wrestling fan, this, but I've always thought it was weird that you can bet on wrestling. Now, obviously, not everything is predetermined in wrestling. The moves and things aren't always predetermined. It's an as you go kind of basis. You kind of map out the story that you're going to tell. But at the end of the day, in most cases, before the match is even, started, we know that there's a knowledge of who's going to win the match and who's going to lose. Now, sometimes they wait until the middle of the match to call out who's going to win the match. But in most cases, you're getting that information before the match. So what's to stop someone within WWE or AEW or something from going to the betting sites and saying, oh, yeah, I know for sure that X, Y, and Z is going to win. You would hope that would kind of trigger some sort of alarm bell if you are the booker of the match and you say, well, I know who's going to win because I'm the one that's choosing who's winning. But I mean, then you have to hope that these people are policing all of that. And I would think that the betting sites would police that, because I don't think that they want to be, out hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on a good bet that they kind of thought was fishy to begin with. So it's just a weird time that we live in with sports and what kind of things you're allowed to do and what you're allowed to bet on. And it just kind of rubs me the wrong way when gambling, and especially in baseball, used to be so taboo.
Well, and if you're a bookie, okay, when you find this information, maybe you're studying a lot of things. Maybe you're looking and saying, hey, this guy throws more balls than strikes, so we'll set the line at this vein or anything. Yeah. But in your study, okay, I'm sure you may have a contact in the team. Hey, what does this guy like to do? Does he like to waste the pitch? Does he come right after him? Right. You can tell stuff like that. And great. It's like everything else. If you have your sources, that's fine. We talk about situations at work where, it pays off to have good sources. But it's one thing to have sources, and it's another thing for, as you're asking people questions, as a journalist, we don't care what happens. But if you're doing a game or not, why wouldn't you say, hey, okay, so can you make sure that the pitcher goes right into the batter? Not just, hey, does this guy like to throw strikes at first or balls? What would stop someone from saying, hey, can you do that? Or what could stop someone from saying, hey, here's a little extra bonus for you? I mean, are bookies paying their sources off? They might. You know what I mean? And maybe that's not that bad of an idea. It's journalistically unethical, but they're a bookie. They're not like, I don't know. There's a ton of unanswered questions, and you've opened up the bag, so you can't really prohibit gambling now. But when you did that, and I know they did that because all these gambling companies pay more revenue, and sports love that, more sources for revenue. They're excited about that. Yeah. But now you raise these questions that are just unfair. And I'll tell you, if I'm Emmanuel Clase right now, I'd be ticked. Yeah, I broke the rules. If I broke the rules, obviously it's just an allegation. But if he broke the rules, his explanation gets punished. But on the other hand, if I'm him, I'd say, look, you guys are profiting off this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why can't I? And it's not like he's throwing games. Okay, you threw a bad pitch for the first, and the count's 1-0. You know what I mean? Who cares? Yeah, I mean, yeah, it might be nice to throw a first strike instead of getting behind a batter, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean he's going to give up home runs or whatever. Right?
But it's such an easier way of hiding that you're doing
Yeah.
it. Like it's different than point shaving where you really look awkward when you're missing a shot in basketball or something like that. Or, there's really just, it's easier to come back from a 1-0 count in baseball where anything could happen on a first pitch. So you could be, you have a 50% chance of throwing a ball out of the zone.
Yep, definitely. So let us know what you think about this. Is there too much gambling? How do we kind of settle down on this a little bit? Because we're creating some awkward situations where guys can get suspended, and if they're guilty, maybe they should get suspended. But I think it just creates a whole bunch of double standards that are really awkward for both sides. So how can we regulate this sports betting a little bit better? Leave us a comment, and like I said, give us a like and subscribe, and have a great day, everybody.